I'm Meg.
I'm Shanae.
I'm Alex.
I'm Kendra. Okay, are you guys ready for the questions?
We're ready.
All right, the first one is, have you ever experienced a big move or culture shift?
Well, I have. I've moved countries. I've actually moved countries twice. First from Australia to London and then from London to New York. So both of those were quite intense cultural differences, even though, you know, we still spoke the same language and things like that. But definitely a bit of a shift in mindset and kind of, you know, just everyday life, really.
For sure.
Yeah, my family ended up moving from Texas to North Carolina when I was in high school. So I finished up my last 2 years in a totally different school in a different state. And then also moving here right after college was a bit of a shift. So yeah, learned a lot through those.
Yeah, I had a couple of moves myself. I moved from like a suburb area in Southern California to a rural area in New Jersey. And then spent 8 years in Boston before moving to New York last summer. And so I definitely have jumped from suburban, rural to city.
And I think New York City in and of itself is such like a culture shock.
Welcome to New York. Yeah, I've had so many moves. I was born in Austria, and then I moved to Florida when I was 7. So that was a huge cultural shift in language, in suburban and everything. And then I moved to New York for college, which was like moving to the suburbs to the city. And then within my time in college, I've had stints of 2 or 3 months of living in 4 different countries in Europe. So every time it's been a different culture and it's just a different adjustment, which is never easy, you know? Yeah. So the next question is, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make and how did you make it?
I think moving from Boston to New York has probably been my most recent challenge per se, but I went from living by myself for the last like 5 out of 6 years to moving in with 3 roommates. And I learned a lot about myself, but also living with other people. And I think navigating and negotiating, having roommates, and it's okay if they're not your best friends, but having that place that you call home and cultivating that together has been something really special and meaningful to me.
Yeah, sure. I love that.
For me, it's been the little things. So like, I remember when I first moved to London, like there was a particular product I needed in the grocery store and I couldn't find it. And I'm like, why can't I find it where I need to find it? And what is it in this country? Like, I don't know. Like, I could go for the whole day without realizing I'm in a different country, and then all of a sudden little things like that. So I think that's the biggest thing. Or like moving to America and having to understand the tipping culture and going, when do I tip? Who do I tip? How much do I tip? Do I tip in this situation? And do I need to put it in an envelope, or do I just give them cash? Or like, is it, I don't know. So like just being able to like ask a friend, hey, so this might sound really stupid, but how do I do this? Like, how do I tip? How do I go to the bank? How do I do these things? Like, it seems really simple, but it was just those little moments that I'm like, I don't know how to do that here.
Yeah, for me, I think it was, I mean, people are people everywhere, but just how people do relationships is so different. Where, you know, in Florida, it's a warm culture and everybody's very friendly and always hanging out. And then you come to New York, or I was in London, and everybody's very closed off, and it kind of takes time and you have to be a lot more intentional. And then even juxtaposing that, when we were in Romania, you never had any alone time. And we would meet somebody on the street and then they would say, oh, come back to my farm. And then we would sit at their kitchen table and they would serve us fresh eggs and all of these things that they'd just grown. It was so different. Everybody wants to connect, but the way that they did it was different. And another random thing is the water supply system, where, you know, in Austria, you can drink right from the faucet, but then in other countries, you can't even throw your toilet paper in the toilet. You have to put it in the trash can. So just random things you wouldn't even expect to ask are always just like random changes in the logistics of things, you know?
Yeah.
I think I had like, when you mentioned London as well, and just like, it just takes a little bit like of
it's
effort.
Like a little bit extra.
You just kind of like assume it's going to be like, hey, we're friends now, right? But whereas when I came to New York, that was completely different, where people were like, hey, you want to hang out? You want to have coffee? Let's do this. Hey, we're best friends now. It's been a week. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, you're like, we're friends. I know.
It was so different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is I moved here for a job. And so like right when I got here, I got the job offer, moved up here like 10 days later, which was insane. I would not recommend that. Give yourself some time.
Wow.
But I think like shifting from like college, having your friends all around you, to like I went to art school, so just like doing projects all the time. Like it's like challenging, but it's kind of like you're in control. It's like moving to like, this is a work environment. How do you be professional, but like how do you still be kind, get to know people? And Alex, to your point, I think like asking questions is like the best way. It's like very humbling, but I feel like people are really responsive if you're like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Yeah. Like, can you help me? And then it just kind of like opens a dialogue, and it opens like you just being like receptive to like learning. But yeah, moving from North Carolina to New York, jumping right into that work culture was interesting, but I think I grew a lot from it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of confidence that's needed in that as well, because I think if you lack the confidence to ask the questions, like you can just like rock up and then be really nervous and like, like, am I tipping enough? Oh, I'll just give you all my money. Like, just take it. I'm good to go. Rather than, like to actually just be humble and just go, I don't know how to do this. Can you just help me out? And they're like, oh yeah, of course. And then it opens the door to them to like think about how it's not normal for everyone to do that stuff and kind of be kind about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. Yeah, for sure. Okay, next question. How important was finding community for you, and how did you meet new people? I think this is really important.
We moved to New York literally knowing no one in the city, so which I think is the story for a lot of people. Like people are just coming to New York because they love it so much, and so whereas moving to London, we did know a few people, so that it was a little bit easier to kind of get into their circles or at least have someone to call on. For me, it was really important to find a church community, and from that, I was seeking it out. But I think just beyond that, whatever community you're in, whether it's work or sport or anything like that, just like asking the question of like, hey, do you want to hang out, and just be bold in that, like that was so important. But to be able to find a community of like being outside your comfort zone and then finding people you can trust and rely on, oh my goodness, it just changes the game. So I really try hard now to be that for other people as well, because I know how important it was for me when I moved.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think to that, like just being open and saying yes. And just like, that was like the best advice that someone gave me, is just like, say yes. The worst that happens is you leave early or it's like not what you expected. But like doing that, I was able to meet so many different kinds of people and like get out of my comfort zone. And like some of my best friends came out of like, okay, you're invited to like a random game night. Just like, oh. And then like, I was in those friends' wedding like a few months ago. And so it's just like,
I love that.
That's been a really cool, like, I guess just like testimony of just like getting out of your comfort zone and just like jumping in. But I do agree that like, inviting people in is equally as important. And just like being that for other people.
Because
like,
you never knew who your new best friend's going to be, right?
Exactly. Like there's always room. Like never close yourself off.
I know moving to New York for me has been mostly reconnecting with really good friends from undergrad. And so a lot of the students from my undergrad end up moving to New York City because they're working in communication, media, performing arts and such. And so it was about having graduated 4 years prior and saying, hi, I'm moving to the city, and going to some of the socials, and also getting connected with one of my friends who was also in a local church. And so I started attending that church with her and then found my own community within that. But I think what's really awesome too is about plugging into national communities. There's like this fitness group that I was a part of in Boston. And so when I showed up, they were like, Shanae's here! And I thought that was really special that someone had, let them know that I was coming and they were waiting for me. I mean, that doesn't necessarily always happen in New York City, but just plugging into some even online communities and saying, oh, I'm in New York, let's meet up for tea or coffee. Social media played a huge part, I think, in that.
Yeah, that's really important, because obviously you've connected to people in your past who you've probably kept in contact with via social media or something. I think the meetup groups as well, like finding like-minded people within those groups. So, or like on Facebook, there's always groups, like there's the Aussie expat group, so you can kind of like hang out with like other Aussies and be like, oh, did you like, what is your experience? Oh my goodness, I went through this. Yeah, me too. Like, things like that is really cool as well.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I really think it's so easy to take friends for granted or community for granted when you're comfortable somewhere. And what you always imagine, okay, I'm going to a new place, but you never really think, okay, where am I going to find my people? And I really like what you guys said about kind of connecting where you have similar interests, because it's so hard to put yourself out of your comfort zone. But if you are connecting on, something that you really love, then it's so much easier to bridge that gap. And I think I've had really good connections with connecting with people at church and also at school, but even just really random, like going to fitness classes, or I really think especially when I was traveling, because relationships are different everywhere and how they do it. It was a lot about, putting myself out of my comfort zone and saying, hey, I'm not doing anything today. Do you want to grab a cup of coffee? Or especially, a lot of times you think people are busy when they're really not. So it's just such a good idea just to ask. And I mean, the worst that they could say is, no, sorry, I'm busy, but do you want to plan to meet up another day? And I mean, that it just shows them that you want to get to know them. And I think that's so special too, is if you see somebody who's new somewhere, to really be intentional and try to welcome them in, because you had those people that welcomed you into wherever you're at. And then it's like to be that for somebody else. I have a few really, really good friends that they didn't have anybody, and I just invited them to hang out with my friend group, and now they're awesome. And it's just so cool to be able, it's like a gift that keeps on giving. Like you reach out to other people, and then now when you're in a place with community, you can reach out to them and invite them into that. And that's so much fun.
That's exactly how I feel about even being a doctoral student this time around, because master students are typically there for a year and a half. And so now that I'm at this institution for 4 or 5 years, there are people coming in and saying, oh, have you heard about this organization? Oh, you should really get like coffee with this professor. And it's really exciting to then be a part of that, because when I was a master's student, there were doctoral students that kind of took me under their wing as well. So that's the gift that keeps giving. I really like that. It really resonates
exactly.
with me.
And I think there's also this mentality of kind of there's lack of community or disparity, or like, oh, people already have friends, so there's no room for me. And it's really, I feel like there's infinite amount of connections that can be made, and like it's never full. Like you can always meet a new person, you can always make a new connection, even if you already have community and have friends. And when I really realized that, I was like, yes, they have friends, but they can also be my friend, or I can be their friend. It's not like you're at a cap and max capacity, then okay, we're done, you know? And that's really exciting too, is like throughout your whole life, you can keep meeting people and traveling and meeting new people everywhere.
Yeah, and it's never too late to try something new.
Exactly.
I've been trying to like grow my network, but also just like try different things. And it's like, this is the perfect time to do it, because there's always a right time,
Especially when traveling, a random thing for me has been cooking. Like when I meet somebody from a new place, I'll ask them to teach me one of their favorite dishes. So I've learned, like Indian cooking or German, or there's different, like Chinese. One of my friends invited me over for Chinese New Year. Spiciest food I've ever had, but it was delicious. But it's just a great way, I think, even oversharing meals, to build connection.
Well, I'm coming over to your place now.
Okay.
No, that's really cool. So say yes, try different things.
Yeah.
Connect with different people. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.